Let's talk about the modulation section, specifically LFO modulation on the Moog Memorymoog. Okay, we've got a great sound going there. The LFO is very nice. It's powerful. It has a variety of waveforms to choose from. It has a variety of destinations to send the modulation to. Let's listen. First of all, we have a triangle wave. Now, we can activate the LFO modulation in two ways. Either through the mod wheel or through the modulation amount knob over here. The range of the modulation amount knob is greater than that of the mod wheel, so I'm going to focus on it. But of course, you want to be able to do one of two things. Either you want to use the modulation as an expressive effect while you're playing. In that case, the mod wheel is your best bet. And that's what that's for. Or if you want a modulation amount to be constant throughout your playing, just part of the natural sound, then you'd use the modulation amount. Okay, so that's super awesome. We of course have a rate control. Let's listen to that. It's pretty slow. It actually does go into the audio range. So you can use it for fattening or texturizing effects. Let's back it off and hear what we can do. You put it right at the edge of your hearing where it's very subtle, then you're going to get warmth and fatness in certain ways. Anyway, so we do have audio range LFO modulation on a polyphonic analog, which is really awesome. Let's go through the wave shapes. Okay, we can, wait, I do want to hear that audio range. Oh, that's a really cool effect. Okay, so we have the triangle wave, which is basically a sine wave for our purposes. We have a sawtooth wave. We have a ramp wave. We have the square wave. And we have my personal favorite, sample and hold. And that's pretty cool. Right now, we've been directing all of these modulations towards oscillator 1, but of course we have a multitude of destinations. Let's bring in oscillator 2, and so we could use a sample and hold on both oscillator 1 and oscillator 2's frequency, or one or the other. Interesting mixing things going on there. All right, or, both together. Really interesting effects. And obviously we could be directing all of these same wave shapes to oscillator 2 if we wanted to. Oh, that's Some interesting effects. So we can adjust the pitch. We can change the pitch of the oscillators with the LFO, all three of them at once, one at a time. And that becomes important when we start getting into various things like sync, where changing the pitch of oscillator 2 when it is synced to oscillator 1 is really important. Or changing the pitch of oscillator 3 when oscillator 3 is being used as a modulation source through voice modulation. So you can actually change the speed of its modulation. So you can have an LFO. When you're using oscillator 3 as an LFO, you can have an LFO that speeds up and slows down and speeds up and slows down, which is really cool. We'll get into that when we address voice modulation. But for now, being able to modulate the pitch of the oscillators, all three of them independently or together in any combination, is really powerful. We also have the ability to engage in pulse width modulation. I'm basically just using the LFO triangle wave to modulate the pulse width of the square wave on oscillator 1. We can change the rate. Use a different wave shape. Sample and hold with pulse width modulation is always a favorite. Really cool. And of course, you can do that with other waves at the same time. Of course, when I say of course too much, but of course I say of course too much. Of course, you can set your pulse width to different widths, and then you'll get more of a coursing effect between the two oscillators as their pulse width is being modulated. We can bring in a third oscillator and modulate its pulse width as well. Get a really amazing sound that way. Rich and huge and crazy. And of course, I'll say it 3 more times, and then never again, we can modulate the filter with the LFO. And since we can modulate the filter in the audio range, we can do things like use it to generate fatness. Or we can just use it as a normal modulation source. Different waveforms. And who can escape the joy of sample and hold with a high resonant filter, especially with a Moog. Audio range, sample and hold. It's very similar to, it almost reaches the same sort of sound as if you could modulate with the noise. So you have that option. And we could be directing this to any number of places, like the filter and all three pulse width modulation. Which makes a neat effect, or even add in one of the pitches of the oscillators. You can bring that pitch, that oscillator's amplitude down. So it just becomes an effect for all of them. Anyway, so with the LFO, we have the ability to use 5 different wave shapes and direct it to, what is that, 7 different destinations, including frequency of the oscillators, pulse width of the oscillators, and the filter.